All right, everyone. Now we're back for part two of my Quest for Glory 2 commentary. Uh, when this starts, the hero is going to you're going to see the intro. I did the intro for all of them. I'm not sure why, because it's a commentary version. I could probably just started with where I left off in the other game. But once it gets past the intro, if you've watched the first part, which if you haven't, maybe go back and do that first before you watch this one. You don't have to. But I explain a lot in the first one that I'm just going to quickly cover in this one. That once we get past the intro, you're going to notice that the gameplay has been sped up. So my original playthrough was 11 hours and 22 minutes long, and I don't think anyone wants to hear commentary about me talking that much. So what I did is I took each segment, usually like the hero would sleep 1 or 2 days, and right after he falls asleep, before he awakens and says he's refreshed, I'd cut it, and that was averaging to be like usually an hour, hour and a half. And I would take it and then speed it up so that it would be reduced. This hour to hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, would be reduced to like 30 to 35 minutes, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. That way it was much easier to digest these rather than listening to me talk for, if I would have sped up the 11-hour one and half that would have been whatever, like 5.5 hours. So you're going to get roughly around 4 to 5 hours with all of them put together, but being spliced and diced as they are, it's going to make it way more bearable to endure. So now that being said, again, this is part 2. After this intro, you'll see that the hero will basically awaken. And I think where we start in part 2, I think it's day 3, because I think part 1 covers day 1 and 2. And if you listen to part 1, I barely even talked about the gameplay. I talked about a lot of the things that I learned in that game that you can do, like don't wander out into the desert, just stick to the wall next to the mountain. And I talked about things that I would have liked to have seen, things that we kind of saw in Quest for Glory 1, such as like there was the Goblin Camp, right, in Quest for Glory 1. We didn't have anything like that in Quest for Glory 2. Like, I mean, you encounter brigands nonstop throughout the day. So it'd been kind of cool to maybe have a brigand camp, and there's a Jackalware, so maybe there could have been like a pyramid or some kind of base. So see, we wake up, some kind of base for the Jackalware, something like that. So there was a lot of that in the first one, and I liked I like talking about the gameplay as well, but I also like talking about some of the things that are unique to the game, and sometimes like things that I wish they would have done. So one of the things that I wish they would have done that I did not mention in the first part, and I'm thinking about it now because I have to go buy stuff, the money changer. So one of the problems in this game is it does take weight into consideration, just like it does in the first one. Now the problem is you can end up with, so you have dinar, which is the main coin. It's the equivalent of like gold. And then you have the centene, I believe it's pronounced, and that is that's the change, basically. The if one is $1, the other one is like 25 cents, the equivalent of that. Or technically, I guess a penny, because I think 100 centene equals 1 dinar. What can happen, especially if you're out there? So real quick, that is from Conquest of Camelot. So they're making kind of a reference there. So one thing that can happen is when you're out there hunting and fighting and doing stuff, you can end up with a lot of centene in your possession. And you'll see this actually happens to me. I have something like, it was like 200 dinar, and then it was like 683 centene. So my weight was coming into play. And what I wish is that you could go to the money changer and basically convert centene into dinar. Even if she takes a cut, like if you know that 100 centene equals 1 dinar, if she was like, hey, for my processing fee, it's 125 centene for every 1 dinar. that would have been great. That would have been great to be able to take 600 and something centene and turn it into even 5 or 6 dinar. That would have reduced the amount of weight my hero is carrying around. And you would think a money changer, maybe not. Like, I don't know if you can take dollars and go to the border of Canada and say, hey, I also happen to have 6,000 pennies. Can I get, like $60 or whatever for it? If they would do that. I don't know if they would. But it would have been nice if they would have done it in this game, because for multiple reasons. A, it allows you to be able to adjust the weight if you are carrying a metric ton of coin to a more solid type of coin. Also, it would have, I know the thief, from what I remember, the thief has a quest with her, like she's the leader of the Thieves Guild or something like that, or she gives you a quest for if you're a thief. I remember that. But for the wizard and the fighter, they have no purpose of going back to her once they've gone to her that first time to convert their gold to basically dinar. So if she would have had that ability to convert coins like that, the centene to dinar transition, it would have been kind of cool, because then, the fighter and the wizard could have potentially had more reasons to go back to her and, convert this money, but at the same time lose money to her, because I think it would make sense, especially if she's part of Thieves Guild, that she would ask for a cut, like instead of 100 centene to 1 dinar, it's like 125 centene to 1 dinar. So it would have created this repurposed use for that character for the fighter and the wizard, or sorry, the fighter and the magic user, I believe it's called in Quest for Glory, not wizard. It would have given more purpose to go back to her, more than just that first time of converting your coin for the other two, so that they can go back and do that stuff. And, in the process, when you do that, you're also losing money to her, so the hero needs to go make more money and stuff like that. That was something that I wish they would have done and included, but they didn't. Or if they did, I cannot figure out how to talk to her and tell her that, because every time I went to her to talk to her, she kept saying, show me something interesting, and I'd be like, show centene? And she's like, yeah, I know what that looks like. Okay. So there was that. What else? So for anyone who knows me, they would probably know that prior to COVID, I was huge into comics. Mostly Marvel comics, I'm not going to lie. I was what you would call like a Marvel zombie back in the day. My friend in the 4th grade, which was a very, 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 very long time ago, introduced me to comics. He gave me Uncanny X-Men 121 and Avengers 159. And then shortly after, my sister bought me a few issues of Thor, and that was it. Like, I was in forever for comics. Well, until 2020. Life, I'm not going to go into what happened during 2020, but life took a huge drastic turn during 2020. And really, it was kind of good that it happened, because when everything happened in 2020, I was already not enjoying the new comics that were coming out. I wasn't really enjoying them the way I did old comics. And I was frequently, rather than reading the new comics, I was just mostly collecting them because I'd been collecting for so long. So for example, with Uncanny X-Men, I literally had, I think it's from Uncanny X-Men like 86 or 87, all the way to like 501 at the time or something like that. And that's when, it was even before then, I was losing interest in comics. And then Marvel had done a few things where they stopped, they ended Uncanny X-Men, rebooted it, and, started over with number 1. And so I was still collecting because I had been collecting for so long. It was near the end, it was mostly out of habit rather than enjoyment. So when everything happened in 2020 and I stopped collecting Marvel and DC and comics in general, except for the exception of a comic here and there, there's nothing consistent. It's just like if a specific character makes an appearance, that's super rare. I might pick it up, but I have boxes and boxes and literal boxes behind me of comics still. But the whole reason I got into this segue is I wanted to talk about the art in the Quest for Glory 2 manual. It's illustrated by someone by the name of Ernie Chan. He actually has a very, very extensive history with Marvel and DC, both. He started as a penciler in 1972 for DC Comics. He did like a number of horror comics and stuff like that. But by 1974, he started working with Marvel Comics regularly on the Conan the Barbarian series, and that was something that I collected. So that was actually kind of cool to see that Ernie Chan, who was the artist for Quest for Glory 2, had also been the artist for Conan the Barbarian, which I was actually reading at the time. He later on became like the DC primary cover artist between 1975 and 1977. He went on to pencil several issues in Marvel for Conan again, some Doctor Strange. He did Call the Destroyer, based off the movie. He did some Power Man and Iron Fist, which I was collecting in the 80s. Sabretooth, who is one of my favorite villains in the Marvel Universe, appeared in Iron Fist number 14. So he didn't do Iron Fist specifically, but he did Power Man and Iron Fist, which was a separate series. From 1978 onward, he worked pretty much exclusively for Marvel, doing just the Conan series. And what's super trippy is it's weird how so many things are connected. So Christy Marks, who did the Conquest series, Conquest for Camelot, Conquest for Longbow, she would end up doing ElfQuest. ElfQuest, even to this day, the original 20 issues of that original quest is one of my favorites. Not what Christy Marks worked on, but she did work on other issues later on down the line in ElfQuest. So it was amazing that she had done, something I was super passionate about with Sierra, to see her into a comic that I was super passionate about. So I love when these things kind of crisscross like that. And Christy Marks has done a number of other like animation stuff as well. She wrote an episode of, I want to say it was He-Man, which I was also a super avid fan of back in the day. Yes, I guess technically still am, because my wall is covered in He-Man figures right now. But anyway, going back to Ernie Chan, in the early 1990s, he ended up leaving comics, and he actually joined Sega. And he was providing the character design and the art for a video game known as Eternal Champions. And what's super trippy is I was always into fighting games, so I love Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, and all that. But Eternal Champions was probably one of my favorite games on the Sega, other than ToeJam and Earl. So that's kind of trippy that he made one of my favorite games on Sega. Unfortunately, in May 16th, 2012, which was, over 10 years ago now, Ernie Chan unfortunately did pass away after a year-long battle with cancer. So there's a fun little fact that I rambled about way too long. If you ever notice, I do that a lot lately with my commentary stuff. Like, especially when I started doing that with the Black Cauldron, I was like rambling about various history and stuff like that, and folks seem to kind of dig that stuff. It's not just about the gameplay. So I thought that'd be kind of fun to kind of, throw some knowledge out there in terms of Quest for Glory 2 and how it ties to me specifically. So here at the Herrick's shop, you can ask him about the notice and stuff like that. Now I'm going back into the game, and he'll tell you that he needs the venom from the scorpion stingers, and he needs the claws of the ghouls for his experiments. So the venom is for the poison cure, and the claws are for experiments. Now, something I learned in this game is he will only buy so many of them. So if you kind of sell them to him like 1, 2 at a time, he'll buy them for a couple. I don't know what the maximum is because I was not paying attention. I just assumed he would keep buying them and not eventually tell me, hey, I don't need it anymore. So I was basically selling it to him onesie twosies. What I would recommend is it gets difficult because as I said before, there is the issue with the amount of weight you can carry in Quest for Glory 2. And I don't think it ever stops. Well, it probably can if you get to an excess over your weight maximum. It will slow you down when you're walking, and it also wear down your stamina. So that guy who's begging for coins, real quick, give him coins, give him dinar, and it'll increase your honor. And you'll see later on that when I had a bunch of dinar and a lot of centines, the way I reduced my weight is I gave him all of my dinar and all of my centene because I knew I could make money, ironically, selling the venom tail and the ghoul claws. But at the time, I was not aware there was, like I said, a maximum you could sell. So what I would recommend doing is getting a plethora of them, if you will, and sell them to him all at one time. Don't sell him onesie twosies, but sell him like 10. And I'm pretty sure he'll buy all 10 because the game won't know to say, no, I only need 5 or whatever the maximum is. So highly recommend sell in bulk. Be like Costco. Where we just were on Keep On Laughing's place, by the way, the worst character in a Sierra game. I find him way more annoying than Cedric from King's Quest V. And Cedric stays with you throughout King's Quest V, and Keep On Laughing to me is way worse. But if you look closely, there are a number of like Easter eggs, I guess you can call it, inside his shop. There's like a Rosella doll, there's a Cookie Monster, and there's a couple other things that you can see around that shop. So if you want, take a look. He won't always respond to everything, but the game will usually tell you something. And then for her, I cannot recommend it enough that save before you enter her establishment. Because if you forget to say farewell when you stand up, she will not talk to you again. So she is very, very judgmental. Omar will also give you clues as to what is coming up. So when the kata tell you, hey, Omar is going to be doing something, try to make it there to hear what he says, because he is giving you clues through his poetry. Another fun fact, Quest for Glory 2 is actually the first game in the series that allows you to basically ascend, if you will, to becoming a paladin. So the option to becoming a paladin was not a part of the first Quest for Glory game. And if you do all the things right at the end, from what I remember, Rakesh will talk to you, basically speak for you, and you'll get the title of a paladin. Keep in mind that the honor is a part of becoming a paladin, but you can max out your honor and still not become a paladin. So for example, in my playthrough, I maxed out my honor to 200 because, like I said, there was a point where I had so much dinar and centene, I just gave it to the beggar, and that increased my honor like quite frequently. And when I reached 200, there was something I must have done wrong that basically broke the honor code of Rakesh not speaking for me. And I know that one of them is probably like if you join the EOF, I believe it is, there's a part where you go do their ritual and you have to fight a guy, and you basically disarm him, and you hear the voices say, kill him, finish him off, finish him off. And I did, but the thing is, you find out you're using a fake sword and you don't actually finish him off. And they say, oh good, might makes right, which kind of cringy now, considering our environment these days. But I think that was one of the things that I messed up, the fact that I quote unquote attacked or finished off a unarmed guy. And I know there's probably a couple of other things. I'm hoping it's not just that one event that I messed up becoming a paladin, because that's gonna suck if that's all it was. Because I would not have joined the EOF if I would have thought there was an option not to. I just assumed the game put it in front of me. I probably need to do it. So um, there is that to keep in mind. The fire elemental has now shown up because you can see at the front shop that the guy who sells you the map and the compass, his thing has been burned down. And by the way, if you've not purchased the map or the compass by now, it's pretty much already too late. Because once the fire elemental appears and burns his shop, all of that stuff is gone. The only thing he sells is quote unquote burnt wood, but he actually does not actually sell it to you. So some of the kata here, and those are the feline people or the feline humanoids, they each have something to, if they can, sell you. So there's one who sells like carpets, but when you try to buy something from her, they say, hey, that vendor right there, they say, hey, I would like to sell it to you, but they would basically say, you can't carry this carpet around you right there, which says, forgive me, they wouldn't let me sell this to you. And the jewelry person has some jewelry. You can try to buy jewelry, but nothing's really there. The only thing they have is a pin, and the pin is like 500 dinar, and you could probably get to, see right there, 500 dinar. So you could probably get to 500 dinar pretty easy, especially if you do what I said, where if you buy the, or if you sell the scorpion tail and the ghoul claws all in one shot, sell all the scorpion tails you have and all the ghoul claws you have, like in numbers of 5 or greater, you're going to make a lot of money. And then on top of that, the money that you make fighting people out in the desert, it'd probably be easy to reach that 500 dinar. But spoiler alert, you'll get that pin near the end of the game for repeatedly helping the city. And so this guy, you basically have to place a bet with him, and you have to arm wrestle him. And if you've, what I would recommend, there's 2 things you can do. You can, on purpose, keep losing to him and keep doing this, and I think that'll help build up your strength. But I got to a point where, like I said earlier, I had so much dinar from the fighting and stuff like that I was buying the vigor pills from the RX guy, and then I would go train with Uhura. I can't remember the trainer's name in the game. So I kept doing that back and forth, which usually during the fighting out in the desert, I would just straight up attack. I wouldn't even bother defending. I would just sword, high attack, low attack, sword. Just that's all I did. But when I went and trained with Uhura, I think that's how they pronounce her name in here. When I trained with Uhura or Rakesh, you could see what I was doing is I was doing a lot of defense and parry. And that was just to get those skills up. Because I primarily just focused on attacking because that increased your strength and your weapon use. Whereas parrying would usually typically increase your stamina and your parry and stuff like that. And then you, when you dodge, it increases, I think, your dexterity. So I was primarily focusing on strength and weapon use to end battles as quickly as I could by just focusing on attacking. So see, fire sale, and then you can't buy anything. So you already know it's there. And what's interesting is they talk about the fire elementals here, but he actually doesn't show up until the following day. So I was thinking, okay, well, if he's not, I was pretty sure he started here, like in this part of the area of Shapir. So I figured I'd just go burn some energy, go fight some stuff, get tired, rest. Following day, the fire elemental should be there to actually combat. Now, I talked about it in the first video. You're going to see me go what I am going to call south, basically down on the screen. I don't remember which way it is compass-wise, because there is a compass you can purchase. But I think it's right there, the flip perspective, that is so jarring, and I don't know why they did that in this game. They do it here in the desert, and they also do it when you're walking through the hallway. Now, I am not. I'm being foolish, and I'm not keeping track of where I'm wandering around. So I think this is the time where A, I forgot to buy more water skins. B, I think I forgot to refill it at the fountain. So I end up, you can see I'm just going to the right screen. I just keep going right, and then the bandit shows up, and then we fight. But the problem is I was not keeping track of where I was going. So I think this is the one where I end up lost in the desert. And you can see I wasn't even doing any defense. I was just straight up attacking. And that's why when I said call mount, and then it says, yeah, you can't. And I knew I was not paying attention, and I was like, oh, damn it. And that is something I wish they would have done in this game. So like right there where there's a cactus, it's known that you can you can get water from a cactus. And it would have been kind of cool if it would at least not sedate all of your water, but that you could use that you can get some water to help do, like a small reprieve of dying dying due to lack of water and stuff like that. And this is where where I'm turning around. I can't remember which way now because of the flip perspective, which way is back to Shapeir. So now I've got no health, no healing potions. And by the way, I'm heading the absolute wrong way now in hindsight because I just watched myself because I went right. Well, maybe not because the flip perspective. See, I can't even tell anymore. So I'm headed the right way because there's a griffin, and then the city will be just a few more screens over. So this is one of those times I was lucky to survive because I was not paying attention to where I was going in the desert. In the first video, I talked about how it is actually foolish to go out into the desert unless you're looking for the dervish or if you're looking for the beast that the dervish talks about. Both of those will come up later. I may have done the dervish in the first one, but I know I end up going back to him because I couldn't remember what I needed him for. The best thing to do if you're out there to go fight monsters is basically as soon as you come out of the city, hang, it would be a right, but basically go to the left on your screen where we pass the vulture, and then know that that vulture is a marker that you're close to town. So basically just go like a few screens to the left of the vulture and just keep going back and forth. It's boring because everything stays the same. Unlike the first Quest for Glory, but it is terribly easy to get lost in the desert in this game, which I guess that's like the realistic thing. Getting lost in a desert, very common because everything does look the same, and I get why they did it, but it does make it bland, and it does make it super dangerous. So this is where I went that way, and I was like, oh, you can keep going. There's no wall to stop you from going too far to the left or too far to the right, unlike the first one where they had barriers that would stop you from going in any specific direction until the game needed you to. So this is me wandering around, and this might be where I perished because I think yeah, I perished. And then so we're going to restore because that got me, and we're going to go ahead and take a rest and see if maybe tomorrow we'll have a better day. So see you in the next one.